The attacks of 9/11 showed the world the incredible bravery of our first responders, firefighters, police officers, paramedics. But since that dark day, many of those responders have fallen quite ill after breathing in the toxic dust that was here at the World Trade Center. The Zadroga Act aims to help them pay for their medical care. It's named after James Zadroga. He's a New York City police officer who died of respiratory disease after years, or I should say years after, working recovery operations there at Ground Zero. But this act does not cover everybody, specifically those who have cancer, at least for now. You have to prove a cause and effect. Federal report claims that there's really no conclusive link between the dust and cancer. Critics say that link is just undeniable. And a new study by the New York Fire Department found those who worked at Ground Zero are nearly 20% more likely to get cancer than those who didn't. With us now is a sponsor of that act, the New York Senator Kirsten. It's good to see you, Senator.
Real pleasure. How are you?
Great. How's it coming?
You know, we're fighting hard. We want to make sure that all of our first responders get the health care that they desperately need. And I think that with this study that's just been released with the near 20% correlation for a few cancers, we will establish that link. And the legislation is written flexibly, so any disease that has a link that was caused by the toxins released at Ground Zero will be covered.
What are the greatest needs of that group of people who served us so well that aren't being met?
Just the grave diseases they've been suffering. I mean, I can tell you, when we were advocating for the bill, it was the men and women who literally raced up those towers that were actually walking the halls of Congress. And they were the ones who knocked on every door and advocated for themselves and their colleagues and the people who couldn't come or the people who had gone before them. And so I can tell you that we want to make sure in their time of need that we stand by them.
And is it your sense that we're accomplishing that?
Yes. This new report of the firefighter study is going to make the difference. We've actually signed a petition, Senator Schumer and I, Carolyn Maloney, Jerry Nadler, P. King, the whole congressional delegation, to actually have them review these findings and to conclusively say that these cancers are covered.
One of the other things that we learned on that day is we're not very good at communicating interagency.
Yes.
To what degree has that improved and what's in the works?
Well, locally, for example, New York City, they've done a great job. Their police officers and their firefighters now have new equipment, new technology, new ability to communicate, but not with the federal government. And one of the recommendations of the 9/11 committee was to say you have to have interoperability between the local, state, and federal governments. God forbid another terrorist attack or a natural disaster or some kind of nuclear meltdown. Those are disaster scenarios that we just can't imagine, and we have to have that interoperability if it ever happens. And so we are fighting right now for that. We want to have a reserved block of megahertz called the D block, 10 megahertz, just for communications between local, state, and national law enforcement and first responders. And if they have that, then you know what just happened with the earthquake and with the flooding, where people's cell phones didn't work for half an hour, that's not tenable. You need to have that direct communication, so we have to have that D block set aside just for our first responders.
10 years later?
Yeah.
We still have these problems 10 years later.
It's unacceptable, and the lack of will by Congress to get this done is something that many of us are very concerned about. But I think we have a new bipartisan effort happening right now. The bill came out of its committee with bipartisan support. It has bipartisan co-sponsorship right now. I think people of goodwill can come together and understand that our national security has to take priority, and we have to make sure this D block is available for our first responders. They need these tools. A kid with a smartphone gets more access to information and can download information more quickly and be able to communicate better than our firefighters and police officers right now. That's not right.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right, does it? Senator, it's great to see you. Thank you.
It's great to see you, Shep, and thanks for your excellent reporting.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Next on this special edition of the Fox Report, a journalist who witnessed the collapse of the Twin Towers firsthand. We'll talk about what it was like to see Building 1